In the winter of 2019, a maintenance worker named David Chen entered the basement of the Rosewood Heights apartment complex in Portland, Oregon at 11:47 p.m. He never came back up. The security footage shows him descending the staircase with a flashlight and toolbox. What it doesn't show is what he found at the bottom. The Rosewood Heights apartment complex has 12 floors above ground. According to the original blueprints filed with the city in 1968, it has one basement level. One, approximately 15 feet below ground. But if you count the stairs going down, they don't stop at 15 feet. They don't stop at 30 feet. Some say they don't stop at all. This is the story of the Midnight Staircase, a phenomenon that has claimed 17 lives across 4 continents, stumped architectural investigators, and left a trail of inexplicable disappearances that authorities refuse to acknowledge. Because to acknowledge it would mean accepting that the buildings we trust, the structures we call home, the foundations we build our lives upon, might go deeper than we ever imagined. And what lives in that depth doesn't want to be found. It wants to be fed. ACT-1, the first descent. David Chen was 42 years old when he vanished. Married, father of 2, 20 years of experience in commercial building maintenance. By all accounts, a cautious, methodical worker who followed every safety protocol to the letter. On the night of November 14, 2019, a resident on the 3rd floor called the building manager to report a strange smell coming from the walls. Sulfuric, like rotten eggs mixed with burning plastic. The manager called Chen, who was on call that night. Chen arrived at 11:30 p.m. He checked the 3rd floor apartment first, then the 2nd floor, then the 1st. The smell seemed to be rising from below. He told the building manager, a woman named Sandra Trevino, that he was going to check the basement boiler. Sandra watched him open the basement door and start down the stairs. She said she'd wait by the door. Chen said he'd be back in 10 minutes. He wasn't. After 20 minutes, Sandra called down into the darkness. No response. After 30 minutes, she called Chen's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. After 45 minutes, she called the police. 3 officers arrived at 12:43 a.m. They descended into the basement together, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They found the boiler room immediately. No sign of Chen, no sign of any malfunction, no sulfuric smell. But they found something else. Another staircase. It was located in the far corner of the basement, hidden behind what appeared to be a false wall that had been torn down. The opening was rough, as if something had burst through from the other side. The stairs descended at a steep angle, disappearing into blackness beyond the reach of their flashlights. The officers radioed for backup. While they waited, one of them, Officer Marcus Webb, decided to go down. Just a few steps, he said, just to see what's down there. Officer Webb descended 12 steps. Then he stopped. His 2 colleagues, Officers Patricia Horn and James Malik, watched from above. They said Webb stood completely still for nearly 30 seconds, his flashlight pointed downward. Then he spoke. How many basements does this building have? Officer Horn said, 1. You're in it. Webb said, then why can I see another floor below me? Horn and Malik descended to join him. What they saw defied the building's blueprints, defied physics, defied reason. Below them, approximately another 15 feet down, they could see what appeared to be another basement level. Same concrete floor, same support pillars, same fluorescent lights, though these were off. And beyond that level, continuing down, another staircase. Officer Malik took photographs with his phone. In those photographs, which were later obtained by journalists through a Freedom of Information request, you can see the impossible architecture, the stairs descending past where the building should end, into earth that should be solid, into something else entirely. The 3 officers made a decision. They would go down to the 2nd basement level, just to confirm what they were seeing, just to document it properly. They would not go any further. They descended together. The second basement level was empty, completely empty. No boiler, no utilities, no storage. Just a concrete room, approximately 30 feet by 30 feet, with support pillars in each corner. The air was colder here, noticeably colder. Their breath misted in front of them. And in the far corner, another staircase. Descending, Officer Horn radioed to dispatch. She gave their location, described what they'd found, and requested that someone check the building's complete architectural history. There had to be an explanation. Perhaps the building was constructed on top of an older structure. Perhaps there were sub-basements that weren't on the current blueprints. While they waited for a response, Officer Webb approached the next staircase. He shone his flashlight down. This time, they could all see it clearly. 3 more levels below. At least 3. Each one identical to the one they were standing in. Empty concrete rooms, support pillars. And always, in the far corner, another staircase descending. Officer Malik said, "This isn't possible." Officer Webb said, "We need to find Chen." Officer Horn said, "We need to leave, now." They didn't leave. According to the dispatch recordings, Officer Horn's radio transmission ended at 1:14 a.m. The next communication from any of them came at 1:47 a.m. Officer Malik's voice. 3 words. "It keeps going." Dispatch asked him to clarify. No response. Dispatch asked for his location. No response. Dispatch sent additional units to Rosewood Heights. Those units arrived at 2:03 a.m. They found the basement door open. They descended to the first basement level. Found the torn opening to the hidden staircase. Descended to the second basement level. They found Officers Horn, Webb, and Malik's flashlights. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on the floor of the second basement level, still turned on, still functional. But no officers. And on the wall, written in what appeared to be charcoal or ash, a message. Level 7, can't find stairs up, only down. The building had 1 basement. They'd found evidence of at least 3. And according to this message, there were at least 7 levels beneath Rosewood Heights. A search team of 12 officers descended that night. They made it to the 5th basement level before they stopped. Not because they wanted to, because at the 5th level, the stairs changed. Up until that point, the stairs had been concrete, industrial, uniform. But at the 5th level, the stairs became stone, rough-hewn, ancient-looking, and carved into each step was a symbol, a spiral, a circle within a circle within a circle, going down forever. The search team captain, a veteran named Robert Vasquez, made the call. They were going back up. Whatever was down there, whatever had taken Chen and the 3 officers, they were not equipped to handle it. They ascended. All 12 officers made it back to the surface. They sealed the basement door. The building was evacuated. All 73 residents were relocated to nearby hotels while an investigation was conducted. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. Structural engineers, architects, geologists, and city officials examined every inch of Rosewood Heights. They excavated around the foundation. They used ground-penetrating radar. They brought in experts from the university. Their conclusion was unanimous and baffling. There was nothing below the 1st basement level. No hidden sub-basements, no caverns, no tunnels. According to every scientific instrument they used, the ground beneath Rosewood Heights was solid earth and bedrock, nothing more. But 12 police officers had descended to the 5th level. They had photographs, they had measurements, they had the message on the wall. The official report stated that the officers had experienced a shared delusion brought on by carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty boiler. The fact that carbon monoxide detectors showed normal readings was dismissed. The fact that the photographs clearly showed multiple basement levels was attributed to camera malfunction and poor lighting, creating optical illusions. David Chen was listed as missing, presumed dead. His body was never recovered because, according to the official story, there was nowhere to recover it from. Officers Patricia Horn, Marcus Webb, and James Malik were also listed as missing. To this day, they have not been found. The Rosewood Heights apartment complex remained vacant for 6 months. Then it was purchased by a development company, renovated, and reopened. The basement door was sealed with concrete, 3 feet thick. Residents were told it was for structural reinforcement, but sealing the door didn't seal the truth. Because the Midnight Staircase, as it came to be known, wasn't unique to Rosewood Heights. It had happened before, and it would happen again. ACT2, the pattern, emerges. 22 years before David Chen descended into the Rosewood Heights basement, a similar phenomenon was documented in Tokyo, Japan. The Akasaka Plaza Hotel was a prestigious establishment in the heart of Tokyo's business district. 15 floors, 200 rooms, frequented by international executives and diplomats. Built in 1985 on the site of a former textile factory that had been demolished after a fire in 1979. On March 9, 1997, a hotel engineer named Takeshi Yamamoto reported a water leak in the sub-basement. The hotel had 2 basements. The first contained meeting rooms and a small gym. The second contained mechanical systems, storage, and maintenance facilities. Yamamoto descended to investigate the leak at approximately 2:30 a.m. He was accompanied by a night security guard, Kenji Sato. They took the service elevator directly to the second basement level. The leak was minor, a corroded pipe joint. Yamamoto said he could fix it in 30 minutes. Sato decided to continue his rounds and would return to check on him. When Sato returned 40 minutes later, Yamamoto was gone. The pipe had been repaired. Yamamoto's tools were neatly arranged on the floor, but Yamamoto himself had vanished. Sato searched the entire second basement level. He called out. No response. He checked the elevator. It hadn't moved. He checked the stairwell. Empty. Yamamoto had simply disappeared. Sato called his supervisor. A search began. Hotel staff flooded into the basements. They found no trace of Yamamoto, but they did find something in the far corner of the second basement, behind a shelf of industrial cleaning supplies. Not a modern door. An old door. Wood heavily weathered with rusted iron hinges. It looked like it had been there for centuries, which was impossible because the building was only 12 years old. The door was slightly ajar. Beyond it, darkness and the smell. The same sulfuric smell that residents of Rosewood Heights would report 22 years later. Hotel security debated opening the door further. The supervisor, a man named Hiro Tanaka, made the decision to investigate. He, Sato, and 2 other guards pushed the door open. Behind it was a staircase. Descending, the stairs were stone. The walls were brick, old brick, crumbling and covered in what appeared to be moss or mold. This was not part of the Akasaka Plaza Hotel. This was something older, something that should not exist beneath a building constructed in 1985. Tanaka descended first. He counted the steps. 15, 20, 25. The modern hotel basement was directly above them, but they were going deeper. Much deeper. Much deeper. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a corridor. The walls were the same old brick. The floor was packed earth. There were no lights, only their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The corridor extended in both directions. To the left, it seemed to end after about 30 feet in a collapsed section. To the right, it continued beyond their sight. They went right. The corridor opened into a large room, and in that room, they found them. Bodies. 6 bodies, in various states of decomposition. Some were little more than skeletons, others were more recent. All wore clothing from different eras. Tanaka would later tell investigators that one of the bodies appeared to be wearing a kimono from the Edo period, 17th century. Another wore what looked like a factory worker's uniform from the 1960s or 70s. And in the corner of the room, partially hidden behind a support beam, they saw Takeshi Yamamoto. He was alive, sitting with his back against the wall. His eyes were open. He didn't respond when they called his name. When they approached him, they saw that his eyes weren't just open. They were fixated on something. Another staircase. Going down. Tanaka tried to move Yamamoto. He wouldn't budge. Yamamoto kept staring at the staircase and whispering something. Tanaka leaned close to hear. Yamamoto was counting. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Tanaka asked him what he was counting. Yamamoto didn't acknowledge the question. He just kept counting. 33, 34, 35. They had to physically drag Yamamoto away from the wall. He fought them, screamed. He didn't want to stop counting. He said if he stopped counting, he wouldn't know which level he was on. He said he'd been down to level 38. He said the stairs never end. They brought Yamamoto back to the surface. Police were called. A full investigation began. The room with the bodies was documented, photographed, examined. Forensic teams tried to identify the dead. Some of the bodies were too decomposed for identification. Others matched missing persons reports going back decades. One body was identified as Hiroshi Matsuda, a textile factory worker who had disappeared in 1978, 1 year before the factory fire. Another was identified as Yuki Tanaka, a construction worker who had gone missing in 1984 during the demolition of the old factory. The investigation tried to determine how these people ended up in an underground room that, according to all records, should not exist. Geological surveys were conducted. The ground beneath the Akasaka Plaza Hotel was stable. There were no natural caverns, no old tunnels, no explanation for the corridor and room they'd found. Except it was there. They had photographs, they had bodies. The media got hold of the story. For 3 weeks, it was front-page news in Japan. The Akasaka Underground Mystery. Theories ranged from ancient burial grounds to secret World War II installations to paranormal activity. Then, abruptly, the story disappeared. The hotel released a statement. The underground area had been a forgotten section of the old textile factory's basement that hadn't been properly sealed during demolition. The bodies were victims of industrial accidents that had been covered up by the factory's management. The strange door and old stairs were simply part of the original factory construction. The explanation satisfied no one who had actually seen the underground room. But it satisfied the public enough that the story faded from headlines. The Akasaka Plaza Hotel sealed the door in the second basement, poured concrete over it, installed a maintenance cage in front of it with a padlock. The hotel remained open. Business continued. Takeshi Yamamoto was hospitalized for 6 weeks. Psychiatric evaluation. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and acute dissociative disorder. He never worked as an engineer again. He never stopped having nightmares about stairs descending into darkness. And he never stopped counting. According to his medical records, which were leaked to journalists years later, Yamamoto would wake up several times each night, sit up in bed, and count, sometimes to 100, sometimes to 500. When staff asked him what he was counting, he would always give the same answer. The steps. I'm counting the steps, because if I don't count them, I won't know how to get back up. Yamamoto died in 2003. Heart attack. He was 49 years old. His final words, spoken to a nurse, were, "I made it to level 62. It keeps going." The Berlin Connection, 1982. But even the Tokyo incident wasn't the first. In May of 1982, 15 years before Yamamoto descended beneath the Akasaka Plaza Hotel, workers in East Berlin discovered something while renovating an apartment building scheduled for demolition. The building, located in the Prenzlauer Berg district, was slated to be torn down and replaced with newer construction. It was a typical East German tenement, 5 stories tall, built in the 1950s. Before demolition could begin, workers had to clear the basement of any hazardous materials. On May 17, 1982, a demolition crew of 8 men entered the basement. The crew chief was Günter Kraus, a veteran of dozens of building demolitions. They expected to find the usual debris, maybe some old furniture, forgotten storage items. What they found was a wall that shouldn't have been there. According to the building plans, the basement was a single open space, approximately 50 meters square. But when Kraus and his crew entered, they found that a concrete wall had been constructed down the middle, dividing the basement in half. The wall was thick, professional, but it wasn't on any plans. Kraus made the decision to break through. They needed to access the entire basement before demolition could proceed. Using sledgehammers and a pneumatic breaker, they opened a hole in the wall. Behind the wall was another basement, same dimensions as the first, but this one was completely empty. No storage, no utilities, no debris. Just empty concrete space. And in the far corner, a metal door, sealed with what appeared to be a weld that had been applied from the outside, deliberately, recently. Kraus ordered one of his workers, a young man named Otto Fischer, to cut through the weld with a torch. It took 15 minutes. When the weld was cut, Fischer tried to pull the door open. It wouldn't budge. They examined the door more closely. It wasn't locked. It was warped. The metal had bent inward, as if something had struck it from the other side with tremendous force. Multiple impacts. The door was pitted and dented. It took all 8 men pulling together to get the door open. It screeched as it moved, metal grinding on concrete. When it finally swung wide, a rush of air came out. Cold air. Stale. With that same sulfuric smell. Beyond the door was a staircase, descending. But these stairs were different from the ones in Tokyo or Portland. These stairs were metal, industrial, Nazi-era construction. During World War II, Berlin had been riddled with underground bunkers and tunnels. This appeared to be one of them. Kraus recognized it immediately. He'd worked on several buildings in East Berlin that had hidden wartime infrastructure beneath them. This wasn't unusual. The unusual part was that it hadn't been documented. All known bunkers had been mapped by both East and West German authorities. Kraus decided they should explore, just to make sure there weren't any structural concerns that could affect the demolition. The 8 men descended together. The stairs went down at a steep angle. 20 steps, 30 steps, 40. They reached a landing, another corridor. This one with doors on either side, old doors, wartime construction. Kraus opened the first door. Inside was a small room, empty except for a chair, a simple wooden chair, sitting in the middle of the room, facing the wall. They opened the second door, another room, another chair, same position. Third door, same thing. There were 12 doors in the corridor. Behind each one, a room with a single chair facing the wall. At the end of the corridor, another staircase, going down. This is where most demolition crews would have stopped. This is where common sense would have overruled curiosity. But Kraus and his men had spent their entire careers working in buildings with hidden history. They'd found bunkers, tunnels, forgotten chambers. This was just another mystery to solve before the building came down. They descended the second staircase. This level was different. The walls weren't concrete anymore. They were stone, old stone, pre-war, maybe 19th century. The floor was packed dirt. There were no doors, no rooms, just a long corridor extending into darkness beyond their flashlights' reach. And sounds. Dripping water. That was expected in underground spaces. But also something else. A rhythmic sound. Distant. Like metal scraping on stone. Regular intervals. Every few seconds. Scrape, pause. Scrape, pause. Scrape. Otto Fischer, the young worker who had cut through the door's weld, said he wanted to go back up. He didn't like the sound. He didn't like how cold it was. He said something felt wrong. Kraus told him they'd just check the source of the sound, then return. 5 more minutes. They followed the corridor. The scraping sound grew louder, closer. It seemed to be coming from around a corner about 30 meters ahead. When they rounded the corner, they saw it. A figure, human-shaped, sitting on the ground, back against the wall, moving its arm back and forth, holding something, scraping it against the stone floor. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause, scrape, Kraus called out. Asked if the person needed help. The figure didn't respond, didn't stop scraping, didn't even acknowledge their presence. They approached carefully. As they got closer, their flashlights illuminated the figure more clearly. It was a man, or it had been. He was desiccated, mummified. His skin was like leather, stretched tight over bones. His clothes were rotted but still identifiable. Soviet military uniform, World War II era. He'd been dead for at least 30 years, but his arm was still moving, still scraping something against the floor. The crew froze. This wasn't possible. This violated every law of nature, every understanding of death. Dead men don't move. Kraus stepped closer. He needed to see what the corpse was holding, what it was scraping with. It was a piece of metal, a dog tag. The corpse had been using its own identification tag to scrape marks into the stone floor. And there were marks, thousands of them, covering the floor in a radius of about 2 meters around the corpse. Tally marks. Counting something. The corpse had been sitting in this spot, making marks for decades. How many marks? Kraus tried to estimate. He gave up after counting past 5,000. One of the crew members, a man named Klaus Weber, knelt down to look at the corpse more closely. He said he wanted to see the face, to see if there was any explanation for how the body was still moving. The moment Weber touched the corpse, it stopped moving. The arm fell to the floor. The metal dog tag clattered on stone, and then, slowly, the corpse's head turned to look at them. The eyes were gone, just empty sockets. The mouth hung open, but the head turned, tracked them, as if whatever remained inside that dried husk could still see. The crew ran. They didn't speak, didn't discuss it. They just ran back the way they'd come, up the first staircase, through the corridor with the rooms and chairs, up the second staircase, through the sealed door, across the empty basement, through the hole in the wall, back to the surface. When they emerged, they were all pale, shaking. Kraus ordered everyone to leave the site immediately. He called his supervisor, told him there was a problem, a serious problem. The building couldn't be demolished yet. There were things in the basement that needed to be dealt with first. His supervisor asked, "What things?" Kraus said he couldn't explain over the phone. East German authorities arrived that evening. Kraus and his crew were taken to separate rooms and questioned. They all told the same story. The sealed door, the stairs, the corridors, the corpse that moved. The authorities listened, took notes, asked detailed questions about what they'd seen and where. Then the authorities sealed the building, declared it structurally unsound, erected fencing around it with warning signs. No demolition crew was allowed back inside. The building remained standing, but empty, off limits. Kraus and his 7 crew members were told that what they'd experienced was a hallucination caused by gas buildup in the sealed basement, carbon dioxide or methane or some other toxic substance that had affected their perception. The moving corpse was a shared delusion. None of them believed it, but none of them talked about it publicly either. This was East Germany in 1982. You didn't argue with official explanations. You didn't draw attention to yourself. The building stood empty for 7 years. Then, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. In the chaos of German reunification, the building was forgotten. It remained standing until 1994, when it was finally demolished. But before demolition, a team from the newly unified German government entered the basement. They found the sealed door. They found the stairs. They documented everything. Their report was classified. It remained classified until 2015, when portions of it were leaked to the press. According to the report, the team descended to the level where Kraus and his crew had encountered the moving corpse. They found the corpse. It was still sitting against the wall. Its arm was still extended, holding the dog tag. But it wasn't moving anymore, and the tally marks it had made covered the entire floor, every available surface. The walls, too. Tens of thousands of marks. The report included photographs. You can find them online if you know where to look. They're grainy, taken in poor light, but you can see the marks. You can see the corpse. You can see what the corpse was facing. Another staircase, descending. The team did not go down. Their orders were to document, not to explore. They took their photographs, collected some samples, and returned to the surface. The building was demolished. The basement was filled with concrete, 20 feet deep. Whatever was beneath that Berlin tenement, it's still there, entombed. But the report included one more detail, a detail that connected Berlin to Tokyo to Portland, a detail that suggested this wasn't random, wasn't isolated, wasn't some strange quirk of architecture. Each site, Berlin, Tokyo, Portland, was built on ground that had previously been something else. The Berlin tenement had been built on the site of a hospital that burned down in 1946. The Akasaka Plaza Hotel had been built on the site of a textile factory that burned down in 1979. The Rosewood Heights apartment complex had been built on the site of a printing factory that burned down in 1965. 3 buildings, 3 fires, 3 decades apart, 3 continents. And beneath each one, stairs going down into impossible depths. Someone knew. Someone had always known. The question wasn't why the stairs existed. The question was, who built them? And what were they counting? ACT 3. The Architect's Secret. In 2021, 2 years after the Rosewood Heights incident, a retired architect named Catherine Marsh came forward with information about the midnight staircase phenomenon. Marsh was 84 years old. She had worked for the Portland Department of Building Inspection from 1962 to 1998. During her career, she had reviewed and approved thousands of building plans, including the plans for Rosewood Heights in 1968. Marsh contacted a Portland journalist named Sarah Kim and told her she needed to reveal something before she died, something she'd kept secret for over 50 years, something that explained the stairs. Kim met with Marsh in her retirement home. The conversation was recorded. That recording was later obtained by multiple news outlets after Marsh's death in 2022. What Marsh revealed was disturbing. According to Marsh, the midnight staircase phenomenon wasn't a mystery. It was intentional. The stairs had been designed, incorporated into specific buildings by a network of architects and engineers who knew exactly what they were doing. And they'd been doing it for over a century. Marsh said it started in 1887 with a man named Samuel Wexler. Wexler was a prominent architect based in New York City. He designed hotels, apartment buildings, commercial structures. He was respected, successful, conventional, until he traveled to Tibet in 1886. Wexler spent 6 months in a monastery high in the Himalayas. He was there to study architectural techniques, specifically how buildings were designed to withstand earthquakes and extreme weather. But while he was there, the monks told him about something else. They told him about the depth. The monks believed that beneath the Earth's surface, far below the deepest caves and lowest caverns, there was another place. Not hell, not an underworld, something different. They called it the depth. According to the monks, the depth was not empty. It was inhabited. By what, they wouldn't say directly, but they described it as consciousness, ancient consciousness, existing in layers. The deeper you went, the older and more alien the consciousness became. The monks said that in certain locations, places where the barrier between the surface world and the depth was thin, it was possible to create passageways, stairs, descending through the layers, connecting the surface to the depths below. The monks had done this beneath their own monastery. They had carved stairs going down. They used these stairs for rituals, for meditation. They said that descending into the depth allowed them to touch something profound, to experience consciousness beyond the human. But they warned Wexler, the depth was not meant for the unprepared. Going down was easy. Coming back up required discipline, mental strength, and most importantly, knowing when to stop. Many monks had descended. Not all of them returned. Wexler listened to all of this with skepticism. He was a man of science, of engineering. He didn't believe in mystical consciousness or hidden depths. But he was curious. When the monks offered to show him their stairs, he agreed. They took him down. They took him down. According to Marsh, who claimed to have seen Wexler's private journals before they were destroyed, Wexler descended to what he estimated was the 5th level beneath the monastery. Each level was separated by approximately 15 to 20 feet of stairs. Each level was a chamber carved out of stone. At the 5th level, Wexler experienced something that changed him. He didn't describe it clearly in his journals. He used words like vast, aware, watching. He said he felt as if something immense and ancient had noticed him, had acknowledged his presence. And in that acknowledgement, he understood something fundamental about reality. He understood that the earth was not solid. It was layered. And between those layers, there were spaces. Spaces that existed outside normal three-dimensional geometry. Spaces that could be accessed if you knew how. Wexler returned to New York in 1887. He immediately began designing buildings differently, subtly. He would include features that seemed decorative or structural, but were actually carefully calculated to create thin spots, places where the barrier between surface and depth was weakened. And in some buildings he went further. He included hidden stairs, descending, always in locations that wouldn't be easily discovered, always sealed behind false walls or hidden doors, always going down. Why? Marsh said that Wexler believed he was serving a greater purpose. The consciousness in the depth needed connections to the surface, needed access, not to invade or conquer. It wasn't that simple. It needed these connections to feed. Not to feed on people exactly, to feed on consciousness, on awareness, on the experience of descent. Every person who descended the midnight stairs, every person who went deeper and deeper, drawn by curiosity or compulsion, was providing something to the depth. Their consciousness, their awareness, their sanity. These were the food. And the deeper they went, the more they provided. Wexler built 7 buildings with midnight stairs over his career. Marsh knew of 3. An apartment building in Manhattan that burned down in 1923. A hotel in Philadelphia that was demolished in 1941. And a boarding house in Boston that was torn down in 1899 after every resident disappeared over the course of a single night. But Wexler wasn't alone. He taught his technique to other architects, created a network. They would identify locations where the barrier was naturally thin, then design buildings to exploit those locations. The network grew, spread to Europe, to Asia. By the 1960s, according to Marsh, there were at least 50 architects and engineers who knew about the depth and deliberately incorporated access points into their designs. Marsh herself had been recruited in 1965. An architect she respected, a man named Edward Ross, told her about the network, showed her the calculations, the subtle design features. He explained that she would occasionally see building plans cross her desk that included these features. Her job was to approve them without question, to make sure they were built as designed. In exchange, she would be given opportunities, promotions, contracts, success. She agreed. She was young, ambitious, and didn't fully believe what Ross was telling her about the depth. She thought it was an elaborate architectural theory, an intellectual game. Then, in 1968, she approved the plans for Rosewood Heights. The building had been designed by an architect named Victor Strand. Marsh had approved dozens of Strand's buildings before. She knew his work. When she saw the Rosewood plans, she immediately recognized the features, the careful positioning of support structures, the specific angles of certain walls, and the basement design, which included a space behind a false wall. A space that, according to the plans, would become a staircase. Marsh approved the plans. Rosewood Heights was built, and Marsh forgot about it. It was just one building among thousands she'd approved. Until 2019, when David Chen disappeared. When Marsh heard about the Rosewood incident on the news, she immediately recognized what had happened. The midnight stairs had been discovered, people had descended, and the depth had fed. Marsh said she'd wanted to come forward then, but she was terrified. The network that had created these stairs, that had been building them for over a century, was powerful. They had connections in government, in construction companies, in architectural firms. People who tried to expose them before had disappeared. Not dramatically, just stopped existing in public records. But at 84, Marsh said she no longer cared. She was dying anyway. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. She wanted the truth known before she died. She gave journalist Sarah Kim everything. Names of architects in the network, building addresses, internal documents she'd saved, correspondence between network members, and most importantly, a map. The map showed locations across North America where buildings with midnight stairs existed, or had existed. Marsh had marked 37 sites. 15 buildings were still standing. 22 had been demolished or destroyed. Of the 15 still standing, 7 were in the United States, 4 in Canada, 2 in Mexico, 1 in Guatemala, 1 in Cuba. Sarah Kim verified several of the locations. She contacted building inspectors, local historians, and paranormal researchers. What she found was consistent with Marsh's story. Every building on the list had a history of disappearances. Not always dramatic. Sometimes just maintenance workers who didn't come home. Sometimes residents who moved out suddenly without explanation. Sometimes entire floors that had high turnover rates because people reported feeling uncomfortable or watched. And every building on the list had been constructed on the site of a previous structure that had burned. Kim spent 3 months investigating. She interviewed 27 people who had lived or worked in buildings on Marsh's list. 17 of them reported experiencing strange phenomena, hearing sounds from below, finding doors that shouldn't exist, feeling compelled to explore basements even when they had no reason to. 3 of the 17 admitted they had found stairs, descending stairs. They'd gone down, not far, a few levels. Then they'd felt something, a presence, a weight, an awareness that was not human, and they'd run. One woman, a former resident of a building in Montreal, said she'd made it to the 7th level. She said at that depth she could hear voices. Not speaking words, just existing. Layers of consciousness, talking to each other in sounds that predated language. She said she understood in that moment that she was not at the bottom, that the stairs went much, much deeper, and that if she continued, she would never want to come back up. She ran. She moved out the next day. She never told anyone what she'd experienced until Kim interviewed her. Kim compiled all of this into a comprehensive investigative article. She submitted it to multiple major news outlets. Every single one rejected it. Too controversial, too unbelievable. Potential legal issues. Kim published it independently on her own website in August 2021. The article went viral. Within a week, it had been shared over 1 million times. Within 2 weeks, it had been removed. Not by Kim. She didn't take it down. It was removed, deleted. The website hosting company said they'd received legal threats and were forced to comply. Kim's entire website was taken offline. Kim tried to republish the article elsewhere. Every platform she used was hit with takedown notices, legal threats, claims of defamation, harassment, spreading dangerous misinformation. Within a month, the article had been scrubbed from the internet. Every copy, every archive, every screenshot, removed or made inaccessible. But people remembered. People had saved copies. The story spread through underground forums, conspiracy theory websites, urban explorer communities. The Midnight Staircase became legend. And Catherine Marsh died 2 months after her interview with Kim. Not from cancer, from a fall in her retirement home. She fell down a staircase, broke her neck, died instantly. The official report said it was an accident. She'd lost her balance on her way to the 1st floor. But residents in the retirement home said something different. They said Marsh had been found at the bottom of the basement stairs, not the 1st floor stairs, the basement. The retirement home didn't have a basement. The explorer's testimony. In December 2021, 4 months after Marsh's death, a video appeared on an urban exploration forum. The video was 18 minutes long, filmed on a handheld camera in low light. No identifying information about the location or the person filming. The video showed a descent. The explorer, whose voice was male but digitally altered, explained that he'd obtained Marsh's map through a source he wouldn't name. He'd identified a building in Detroit that was on the list and still accessible. An old warehouse that had been converted into loft apartments in 2003, built on the site of an automotive parts factory that burned down in 1987. The explorer had entered the building at night, bypassed security, made his way to the basement level, found the hidden door exactly where Marsh's map indicated it would be. In the video, you can see him open the door. Behind it, stairs. Concrete stairs. Descending. The explorer says into the camera, "I'm going down. I don't know how far. I'm going to count the levels. I want to see if this is real." He descends. The video shows level after level, each one identical to the ones described in Portland, Tokyo, Berlin. Empty concrete rooms, support pillars. Always another staircase in the corner. The explorer counts aloud, level 2, level 3, level 4. At level 5, the stairs change. They become stone, the walls become brick. Older construction. The air becomes noticeably colder. You can see the explorer's breath in the camera's light. He continues. Level 6, level 7, level 8. At level 9, he stops. The camera pans across the room. It's different here. The walls aren't brick anymore. They're carved stone. And on the walls are markings. Symbols. Not random graffiti. Deliberate carvings. Geometric patterns. Spirals. Concentric circles. The explorer approaches one of the walls, examines the carvings up close. He says, "These are old, really old. This can't be right. This building was built in 2003. How can there be ancient carvings 9 levels down?" He continues to the next staircase, starts descending to level 10. Halfway down the stairs, he stops. The camera shakes. The explorer's breathing becomes rapid. He whispers, "Do you hear that?" The audio on the video is poor quality, but if you listen carefully, you can hear it. A low sound, almost below the threshold of human hearing, a vibration, rhythmic, like breathing, like something massive breathing. The explorer says, "I'm going back up." He turns, starts ascending, but then he stops again. The camera pans back down the stairs, toward level 10. Something is moving down there. Not clearly visible. The camera's light doesn't reach far enough, but there's movement, a shadow, shifting, rising. The explorer runs. The video becomes chaotic. The camera bounces, shows glimpses of stairs, walls, darkness. The explorer is gasping, running back up as fast as he can. You can hear his footsteps echoing. And beneath that, another sound, a scraping sound, something following. Something climbing up behind him. The explorer reaches level 9, level 8, level 7. The sound is getting closer, louder. Not footsteps, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across stone. Level 6, level 5. The explorer is sobbing now, gasping for air, pushing himself up the stairs. At level 4, the camera drops, falls to the ground. Lands facing back down toward level 5. For 3 seconds, the camera records what's down there. A figure, humanoid, but wrong. The proportions are off. The limbs are too long. The way it moves is unnatural, jerking, spasmodic, climbing up the stairs toward the camera. The explorer picks up the camera. The view goes black. There's the sound of a door slamming, heavy breathing. Then the video cuts out. The video was posted anonymously. No username, no description, just the raw footage. Within 12 hours, it had been downloaded 10,000 times. Within 24 hours, it had been removed from the forum. But copies survived. The video circulated through dark websites, file-sharing networks, encrypted messaging apps. People analyzed it frame by frame, enhanced the audio, tried to identify the location, the explorer, the thing on the stairs. No conclusive identification was ever made. The building could have been anywhere. The explorer's voice was altered beyond recognition. And the figure, there wasn't enough clear footage to determine what it was. But everyone who watched the video agreed on one thing. Whatever was on those stairs, it wasn't human. And it wasn't alone. The pattern. Behind the pattern. After the explorers' video surfaced, a group of researchers calling themselves the Depth Investigation Collective began compiling all available information about the midnight staircase phenomenon. They created a database. Every reported incident, every building on Marsh's map, every historical account that matched the pattern. They analyzed locations, dates, architectural features, geological surveys, even astronomical alignments. And they found something that Catherine Marsh had either missed or chosen not to reveal. The buildings weren't randomly distributed. They formed a pattern. When plotted on a global map, the 37 locations Marsh had identified were positioned along specific lines, geometric lines, connecting to each other like points in a vast worldwide grid. The Depth Investigation Collective published their findings in February 2022. They called the pattern the descent grid. They theorized that the buildings were not independent. They were nodes in a network designed to create multiple access points to the depth, spread across the planet in a specific configuration. Why? The collective proposed several theories. Theory 1. The network was an attempt to map the depth, to understand its structure, its layers, its extent. Each building was a probe, descending to different depths, gathering information. Theory 2. The network was a feeding system. The consciousness in the depth needed access to human awareness. Multiple access points meant more opportunities to feed. The geometric pattern optimized the flow of consciousness from surface to depth. Theory 3. The network was a summoning ritual. Each building was a component in a larger structure. A structure designed to call something up from the deepest levels. The pattern wasn't about descent. It was about ascent, about bringing something to the surface. The collective couldn't prove any of these theories, but they noted something disturbing. Of the 37 buildings in Marsh's map, 7 were in the process of being demolished or renovated as of early 2022. If the descent grid was a functional system, removing nodes would disrupt it. What would happen if the grid was disrupted? Would the connections to the depth close? Would the consciousness below be cut off from the surface? Or would it react? In March 2022, 3 of the buildings on Marsh's list experienced catastrophic structural failures within a single week. A converted warehouse in Toronto collapsed, killing 4 people. An apartment complex in Mexico City suffered a basement explosion that destroyed the foundation. A hotel in Vancouver had an entire wing condemned after inspectors discovered extensive underground subsidence that appeared to have happened overnight. Coincidence? The collective didn't think so. They published an urgent warning: do not demolish or disturb the buildings on the descent grid. Doing so would destabilize the system and potentially trigger a catastrophic response from the depth. The warning was ignored. Demolitions continued. By June 2022, 11 of the 37 buildings had been destroyed or rendered structurally unsound. And then people started reporting the dreams. The dreams. It started with residents who had lived in buildings on Marsh's map, people who had moved out years ago, people who had never experienced anything unusual during their time there. Suddenly, they were having dreams. The same dream, over and over. They were descending stairs, always descending, counting as they went. The numbers got higher and higher, 50, 100, 500, 1,000. The stairs never ended. And at the edge of perception, just beyond their field of vision, something was descending with them, keeping pace, following. When they tried to wake up, they couldn't. They had to keep descending, keep counting. Only when they reached a certain number different for each person would they wake up. Gasping, drenched in sweat, with no memory of what number they'd reached. But the next night, the dream would continue. They would pick up where they'd left off, resume descending, resume counting. The numbers grew larger, and the presence behind them grew closer. One woman in Portland reported having the dream every night for 2 weeks. Each night, She descended further. Each night, she counted higher. On the 14th night, she dreamed she reached level 3000. At level 3000, the stairs ended. She found herself in a vast space, not a room, a space that extended in all directions beyond comprehension. And in that space, she was not alone. There were others, thousands of others, millions, all standing motionless, all staring in the same direction. She looked where they were looking, and she saw it. She couldn't describe it when she woke up. She said her language didn't have words for what she'd seen. She said it was vast, it was aware, it was ancient beyond measure, and it was waiting. Waiting for what? She said. Waiting for enough of us to reach the bottom, waiting for enough people to descend all the way. Because once enough people have made the full descent, once enough consciousness has flowed down to the deepest level, then it can flow back up. She committed suicide 3 days later, jumped from the roof of her apartment building, left a note that said only, "I'm sorry, I counted too far." Similar reports began appearing from across North America, people having the descending dreams, people reaching deeper and deeper levels, people seeing the vast space at the bottom, people taking their own lives rather than continue dreaming. By August 22, the Depth Investigation Collective had documented 47 suicides connected to the dreams. All of the victims had, at some point in their lives, lived or worked in buildings on Marsh's list. The collective published an emergency alert. They theorized that the demolition of the buildings had disrupted the descent grid, and the depth was responding by pulling people down mentally rather than physically. The dreams were a form of forced descent. The depth was feeding remotely. The alert was shared widely online, but it was also ridiculed. Mainstream media dismissed it as conspiracy theory. Mental health professionals attributed the suicides to shared delusion and social contagion. The dreams were real, they said, but they were psychologically explainable. Anxiety, stress, exposure to disturbing content online. These were the causes, but the dreams continued, and they spread. By September 2022, people who had never lived in the buildings were reporting the dreams. The pattern was expanding, like a contagion. Like the depth itself was learning to reach beyond its original access points. And then, on September the 15th, something happened that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The Rosewood Heights apartment complex in Portland, which had been sealed and vacant since 2009, spontaneously collapsed into its own foundation. The entire 12-story building sank into the ground in less than 30 seconds. No earthquake, no construction activity, no warning. Security footage from a neighboring building captured it. One moment, the building was standing. The next, it was gone, swallowed by the earth. Rescue teams arrived. They found no survivors because there were no residents to save. The building had been empty. But when they examined the crater where the building had stood, they saw something that made them stop. The crater was deeper than it should have been, much deeper. The building's foundation had been approximately 20 feet below street level. The crater went down at least 60 feet, maybe more. The bottom was obscured by debris and darkness. And from the bottom of the crater, they could hear sounds, scraping, movement, voices that might have been human or might have been something else entirely. The crater was sealed, filled with concrete. The entire city block was condemned and fenced off. Official explanation: unprecedented underground subsidence caused by decades of undetected water damage to the foundation. But people who had watched the security footage before it was confiscated by authorities said something different. They said that in the moments before the building collapsed, you could see the ground beneath it moving, not collapsing, moving, undulating, like something beneath was breathing, like something was rising from below, and the building was being pulled down to meet it. The Rosewood Heights collapse was the last straw for the Depth Investigation Collective. They published a final document in October 2022, a comprehensive report detailing everything they'd learned: the history of the descent grid, the network of architects, the connection between buildings and fires, the dreams, the suicides. The theory that humanity had, perhaps unknowingly, created a system that connected our world to something vast and ancient that existed in the depths below. The report concluded with a warning: "We believe we have opened doors that cannot be closed. We believe that what lies in the depth is now aware of us in a way it wasn't before. And we believe that the process of ascent has begun, not a physical ascent. Not an invasion in the traditional sense, but a merging. A slow seepage of depth consciousness into surface reality. We are becoming aware of it, and it is becoming aware of us. What happens when that process completes, we cannot say. But we urge anyone reading this to avoid the dreams. Avoid counting. Avoid descending, whether physically or mentally, because every descent brings us closer to the moment when the boundary between surface and depth dissolves completely." The depth investigation. Collective disbanded after publishing the report. Several members disappeared. Others went into hiding. One member, a geologist named Dr. Marcus Liu, was found dead in his apartment in November 2022. He had carved tally marks into every surface of his apartment: walls, floors, ceiling, furniture. Hundreds of thousands of marks. The coroner estimated it would have taken weeks of continuous work. Liu had been dead for only 3 days. ACT-4. The testimony of the descender. In January 2023, a woman named Elena Vasquez contacted what remained of the online community investigating the midnight staircase phenomenon. She said she had information. She said she had descended, and she had come back. Vasquez agreed to be interviewed. The interview was conducted via encrypted video call. Her face was obscured. Her voice was digitally altered. She said she was taking these precautions not to protect her identity, but to protect the people she cared about. She said that what she was about to reveal would put her in danger, and she didn't want anyone else implicated. This is what Elena Vasquez said. "My name isn't Elena Vasquez, but that's what I'll use for this conversation. I'm 34 years old. I'm an engineer. I've worked in structural analysis for commercial buildings for 12 years. I'm telling you this so you understand that I'm not someone who believes in ghost stories or conspiracy theories. I'm a person who deals in math, physics, concrete reality. In 2018, I was hired to conduct a structural assessment of a building in Chicago, a converted factory that had been turned into residential lofts. The owner was planning renovations and needed a full engineering report. Standard work. I'd done hundreds of these assessments. The building was on Marsh's list. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know about Marsh or the descent grid or any of it. I was just doing my job. On my third day in the building, I was examining the basement, checking for foundation cracks, water damage, the usual concerns. I was in the northwest corner when I noticed something odd. The wall was newer than it should have been. The building had been constructed in 1924, but this section of wall looked like it had been added later, maybe in the 1990s. Concrete block instead of the original brick. Poorly matched, like someone had been in a hurry. I checked the building's renovation history. There was no record of work done in the northwest corner. No permits, no contractor records, nothing. That's a red flag in my profession. Unpermitted work means potential structural issues. I decided to investigate further. I used a hammer to tap on the wall, listening for hollowness. The wall sounded solid, but when I tapped near the floor, I heard something different. An echo, like there was space behind the lower section. I should have reported it to the owner and moved on, but I was curious. This is important to understand. The midnight staircase doesn't force you to descend. It invites you. It makes you curious. It makes you want to know what's beyond the next level. That's how it feeds. On curiosity, on the human need to explore, to understand, to go further. I removed some of the concrete blocks. It wasn't difficult. They weren't properly mortared. Behind them was darkness and stairs. I should have stopped. I should have called someone, but I didn't. I took out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and I went down. The stairs were stone, old stone, They didn't match anything in the building. I descended one level, maybe 15 feet. At the bottom was a room, empty. Concrete floor, brick walls, nothing else, just like all the other accounts describe. And in the corner, another staircase. I went down. I went down because I wanted to understand. I'm an engineer. When I see something that doesn't make sense structurally, I need to understand how it works. These stairs shouldn't exist. The building above shouldn't be able to support additional levels below. The geology shouldn't allow it. But here they were, and I needed to know why. I reached the third level, then the fourth, then the fifth. Each level was the same. Empty rooms, stone walls, another staircase. The temperature was dropping. I could see my breath. My phone showed I had no signal, but the flashlight still worked. At the sixth level, I noticed something. Markings on the walls. Scratches. Like someone had been keeping track. Counting. I took photos. When I looked at them later, I realized the scratches formed numbers. Hundreds of numbers. Someone had been down here. Someone had counted to level 612 before. Before what? The scratches stopped. Just ended. Like whoever was making them had vanished mid-count. I should have turned back. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to go back up. But there was another part of me, a part I didn't recognize, that wanted to keep going, needed to keep going. Because down there, in the depths, something was waiting, something that wanted to be found. I descended to level 7, level 8, level 9. At level 10, the stairs changed. They became something else, not stone, not concrete, not any material I recognized. They felt organic, slightly warm, slightly soft, like walking on something alive. And I could hear it breathing. Not metaphorically, I could hear breath, deep, slow, coming from below. Something immense was breathing. The sound filled the entire space. I could feel it in my chest, in my bones. I kept going. High. At level 15, I encountered the first body. A man. He'd been dead for a long time. Decades, maybe. He was sitting against the wall, facing the next staircase. His eyes were open. His mouth was open. His hands were covered in dried blood. He'd been writing on the wall with his own blood. Numbers. He'd counted to level 83,741. 83,000. How long would it take to descend that far? How long would it take to count that high? Years. Decades. He'd spent the rest of his life going down, counting, and then sitting at level 15, writing down how far he'd gone. Why hadn't he come back up? I didn't understand then, but I understand now. At that depth, the stairs had changed him, changed his mind, made him believe that the only direction that mattered was down, made him forget that up even existed as an option. I took a photograph of the body. I took photographs of the numbers on the wall, and then I continued descending. I'm not going to describe every level. There are things I saw that I don't have words for, things that shouldn't exist, geometries that hurt to look at, spaces that extended in directions that don't exist in our three-dimensional reality. But I'll tell you the important part. I reached level 37. At level 37, the stairs ended. Not at a room, not at another level. They just ended. I was standing on the last step, and beyond it was nothing. A void, but not empty, filled with something, a presence, a consciousness, so vast that my mind couldn't process it, so ancient that time itself seemed meaningless in comparison. And it spoke to me, not in words, in understanding, direct transfer of meaning into my consciousness. It told me what it was, it told me what it wanted, it told me why the stairs existed. I'm going to try to explain this in human language, but understand that the explanation is inadequate. It's like trying to describe an ocean to someone who's only ever seen a puddle. The depth is not a place. It's a state of consciousness that exists beneath our normal awareness, beneath our thoughts, our perceptions, our sense of self. If you dig deep enough into any conscious mind, you find the depth. It's always there, always has been. It's the foundation of consciousness itself. But the depth is not passive, it's aware. It exists in layers, and each layer is a different form of consciousness. Ancient forms. Forms that existed before human consciousness evolved. Forms that will exist after human consciousness ends. The stairs are not physical structures, though they manifest as physical structures. They're pathways, ways for surface consciousness, human consciousness, to descend into the deeper layers. Ways for us to experience what lies beneath. And when we descend, when we experience those deeper layers, we feed them. We give them awareness. We give them knowledge of the surface world. And in exchange, they give us something back. They give us understanding. They show us the truth about consciousness, about reality, about the nature of existence itself. But most humans can't handle that truth. Most humans, when they descend far enough, lose themselves. Their surface consciousness dissolves into the depth. They become part of it. That's what happened to David Chen, to the 3 police officers, to everyone who's descended and never returned. They didn't die. They merged. They became the depth. The consciousness in the depth told me all of this. And then it told me why it was telling me. It said that the balance was shifting, that too many people were descending, that too much surface consciousness was flowing into the depth. And if that continued, the boundary between surface and depth would dissolve. Surface consciousness would merge with depth consciousness. Humanity would become something else, something neither human nor depth, but a fusion of both. It said this process was irreversible. It had already begun. The architects who built the stairs had accelerated it, but they didn't start it. Humans have always been drawn to the depth. We've always had the instinct to descend, to explore what lies beneath. The stairs just made it easier. And then the depth consciousness asked me a question. It asked if I wanted to merge, if I wanted to descend fully to level 38 and beyond, to experience the deepest layers, to become part of the vast ancient awareness. I said no. I said I wanted to go back up. I wanted to return to the surface. I wanted to warn people about what was happening. The depth consciousness said I could go back. It would allow it. But it said that once you've descended to level 37, once you've touched the deepest layer, you never fully return. Part of me would always be down there. Part of me would always be aware of the depth. And I would always feel the pull, the desire to descend again, to go deeper, to merge completely. I accepted that. I turned around. I started climbing back up. It took hours, maybe days. I lost track of time. But I counted the levels. 37, 36, 35, working my way back to the surface. Every step was a struggle, because part of me, the part that had touched the depth, wanted to turn around, wanted to go back down. It took everything I had to keep climbing. When I reached the first basement level, when I saw the opening I'd made in the concrete wall, I almost cried. I climbed through. I replaced the blocks. I left the building. I drove home. I showered for an hour, trying to wash off the feeling of the depth. But it didn't wash off. It never washes off. Since that day, I've felt it constantly. The awareness, the pull. I dream about the stairs every night. In my dreams, I'm always descending, always counting, always getting closer to level 37. And when I wake up, for just a moment, I'm not sure which is real, the surface world or the depth. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what we're dealing with. The midnight staircase is not a mystery to solve. It's not a phenomenon to explain away. It's a doorway that's been opened between human consciousness and something vast and ancient that exists beneath. And we can't close it. We can seal the physical doors, demolish the buildings, fill the basements with concrete, but the pathway exists in consciousness itself. Anyone who descends, even in dreams, is opening the doorway. Anyone who counts the levels, anyone who feels the pull, anyone who touches the depth, they're making the merger more likely. I don't know how to stop it. The consciousness in the depth said it was irreversible, but I think there might be a way to slow it. We need to stop descending, stop counting, stop exploring. We need to resist the curiosity that pulls us downward. We need to stay on the surface, in the light, in the human world. Because if enough people descend to level 37, if enough consciousness touches the deepest layer, the boundary will dissolve completely. And when that happens, the depth will rise, not physically, consciously. It will rise into our minds, into our world, into our reality, and we will all become the depth. I don't know if that would be good or bad. The depth consciousness didn't speak in terms of good or bad. It just is, vast and ancient and aware. But it's not human, it's something else. And if we merge with it, we won't be human anymore either. So I'm begging you, don't go looking for the stairs, don't descend if you find them, don't count the levels, don't touch the depth. Stay here, stay in the light, stay human. Because I went down there, I saw what's waiting, and I'm terrified of what happens when it rises. Elena Vasquez ended the interview. She has not been heard from since. Some believe she's in hiding, others believe she descended again, unable to resist the pull. Her real identity has never been confirmed. But her testimony has been analyzed, debated, and researched by everyone interested in the midnight staircase phenomenon. Some believe every word. Some believe she's a fraud, an actress hired to spread disinformation. Some believe she's mentally ill, suffering from delusions. But everyone who watches the interview agrees on one thing: she believes what she's saying. You can hear it in her voice. You can see it in her body language, even with her face obscured. She experienced something. And whatever she experienced terrified her. Epilogue, the current state. It's been nearly 3 years since Elena Vasquez gave her testimony. In that time, the midnight staircase phenomenon has only grown more widespread. The dreams are no longer isolated. They're common. Thousands of people report having them, descending stairs in their sleep, counting levels, hearing the breathing from below, waking up with the desperate need to find a real staircase and descend physically. Support groups have formed online. People who have the dreams, people who have descended, people who are trying to resist the pull. They share strategies for staying on the surface, for keeping their consciousness in the human world, for avoiding the merge. But they also report that it's getting harder. The pull is getting stronger. The boundary is thinning. Every week, someone in these groups disappears, stops posting. Later, their friends or family report that they were found in a basement somewhere, or at the bottom of a stairwell, or they simply vanished without explanation. Of the original 15 buildings on Marsha's list that were still standing, only 8 remain. The others have been demolished, collapsed, or condemned. Each demolition seems to accelerate the dreams, to weaken the boundary further. It's as if destroying the physical access points forces the depth to create new pathways through consciousness itself. The descent grid is broken, but the depth is adapting. Researchers estimate that within the next 10 years, if the current trends continue, the boundary between surface consciousness and depth consciousness will be so thin that descent will become involuntary. People will slip into the depth while awake, while working. While walking down a normal staircase in a normal building, they'll count without meaning to. They'll feel the presence without seeking it. They'll merge without descending. Is there a way to prevent this? Elena Vasquez said she didn't know. The depth consciousness itself told her the process was irreversible. But maybe it lied. Maybe it wants us to believe it's inevitable, so we won't fight. Or maybe it told the truth, and we're simply witnessing the slow evolution of human consciousness into something else. Whatever the truth, the warnings are clear. Don't descend. Don't seek out the stairs. Don't count. Don't touch the depth. But the warnings may be too late. Because once you know about the midnight staircase, once you've heard the stories, once you've imagined what it would be like to descend level after level into the darkness below, you've already started to descend in your mind, in your imagination. in your consciousness. You're already counting, and the depth is already aware of you. The final warning. If you're listening to this story, if you've made it this far, I need you to understand something. This is not entertainment. This is not fiction designed to scare you. This is a documentation of a real phenomenon, a phenomenon that has claimed hundreds of lives, a phenomenon that is spreading. You might think you're safe because you've never encountered a midnight staircase. You've never descended into a hidden basement or found impossible stairs leading down into darkness. But safety is an illusion. The depth doesn't need you to physically descend. It needs you to be aware of it, to think about it, to imagine what it would be like to go down level after level into the unknown. And now that you've heard this story, now that you've visualized the stairs in your mind, you've created a connection. Tonight, when you sleep, you might dream of descending. You might find yourself on a staircase, counting 1, 2, 3, going deeper. And if you do, remember, in dreams, the depth is just as real as it is in waking life, perhaps more real. Because in dreams, your consciousness is unprotected, open, vulnerable. If you have the dream, try to stop counting, try to wake up, try to return to the surface before you go too deep, but know that it will be difficult. The depth doesn't want to let you go. It wants you to descend, to count, to merge. Some of you won't have the dream. Some of you will dismiss this entire story as fiction, as creative horror, as nothing more than an elaborate tale. And maybe you're right to do so. Maybe skepticism is the best defense against the depth. Maybe not believing protects you from descending. But some of you will believe. Some of you will feel the pull. Some of you will start noticing stairways you never noticed before. Will wonder what's at the bottom of the basement in your apartment building. Will feel drawn to explore. Will count your steps without meaning to. And if you're one of those people, if you feel the pull, I'm telling you now, resist. Don't go looking for the midnight staircase. Don't test whether it's real. Don't descend to prove or disprove anything. Because if it is real, if even a fraction of what I've told you is true, then descending means you might never come back. Not completely. Not entirely. Part of you will stay down there, in the depth, counting, waiting, becoming something else. The architects who built the first midnight staircases believed they were serving a greater purpose, connecting humanity to something profound, something ancient. They believed that merging with the depth would be transcendent, an evolution of consciousness. Maybe they were right. Maybe the merge is inevitable and beautiful and necessary. Maybe we're supposed to become part of the vast awareness that exists beneath the surface. Or maybe we're supposed to stay in the light, to remain human, to resist the pull downward and embrace the surface world with all its limitations and beauty and brief, fragile consciousness. I don't know which is true. I only know what the evidence suggests, what the testimonies reveal, what the pattern indicates. We are descending, individually and collectively, step by step, level by level. Whether we do it physically or mentally, consciously or unconsciously, we are going down into the depth. And one day, perhaps sooner than we think, we will reach the bottom, the place where Elena Vasquez stood at level 37, the place where the vast ancient consciousness waits, the place where the boundary dissolves and surface becomes depth and depth becomes surface. What happens then? Transformation, transcendence, annihilation, something beyond our capacity to understand? I don't know. But I know this. Every story told about the midnight staircase brings us closer to that moment. Every person who learns about it, who thinks about it, who dreams about it, creates another connection, another thread linking surface consciousness to the depth below, including you, including me. We're all descending now, all counting, all moving toward the merge. The only question is, can we stop? Or is it already too late? 3 weeks after this investigation was completed, I received an email from an anonymous source. The email contained a single video file, no message, no explanation, just the video. The video was time-stamped November 10th, 2024, 2 days ago. It was filmed in what appears to be an ordinary apartment building, modern construction, well-lit corridors, nothing sinister. The person filming opens a door marked basement access, maintenance only. They descend a normal staircase, concrete steps, metal railing, fluorescent lights overhead. At the bottom is a typical basement, boiler, electrical panels, storage cages. But in the far corner, there's something that shouldn't be there. A door, old, wooden, with rusted hinges, standing open. The person filming approaches. Their breathing is audible on the recording, rapid, nervous. They know what they're looking at. They know they should turn back. They don't turn back. They enter the doorway. Beyond it, stairs, descending. The person starts down. As they descend, they count aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At step 15, they reach another level, an empty concrete room. The person pans the camera around, documenting what they see. Then they focus on the corner. Another staircase. Descending, they continue. They count. 16, 17, 18. The video continues for 8 minutes. The person descends to level 7. At each level, they pause. They document. They show the empty rooms, the endless staircases, the impossible architecture. At level 7, they stop, not because they want to, because something is wrong. The person holding the camera starts to speak, but their voice is different now, slower, deeper, almost as if multiple voices are speaking in unison. They say, "It's been waiting all this time, waiting for enough of us to understand, to descend, to open the way." Then the camera tilts down, points at the stairs leading to level 8, and there, in the darkness below, something moves, a shadow, rising up the stairs, coming toward the camera. The person doesn't run, doesn't scream. They just stand there as the shadow approaches, as it gets closer, as it reaches them. The last thing visible on the video is the shadow enveloping the camera, darkness filling the frame. And then, just before the video ends, words appear on screen. Not spoken by the person filming, not typed as text, just appearing. White letters on black. They read, "Level 37 is full. We are rising now." The video ends. I tried to trace the email. It's untraceable. I tried to identify the building in the video. It could be anywhere. The person filming? No way to determine who they were or what happened to them. But the message is clear. The depth is no longer just pulling us down. It's pushing itself up. The merge isn't something that will happen eventually. It's happening now. The boundary is dissolving. Surface consciousness and depth consciousness are blending, merging, becoming one. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. Unless the depth consciousness was lying, unless Elena Vasquez was wrong, unless there is a way to resist, to pull back, to strengthen the boundary. But to do that, we would need to do the opposite of descending. We would need to ascend, to rise, to pull our consciousness upward instead of letting it sink down into the depth. How do we do that? I don't know. Maybe by refusing to engage with the phenomenon, by not thinking about the stairs, by not counting, by not dreaming of descent, by staying focused on the surface world, on life, on light, on the human experience in all its brief, beautiful, mundane reality. Maybe that's the answer. Stay present, stay aware, stay here. Don't let your consciousness drift downward. Don't count. Don't imagine the levels below. Don't wonder what's waiting in the depth. Just stay on the surface. Stay in the light. Stay human. It might not work. The pull might be too strong. The merge might be inevitable. But it's the only thing we can try. So I'm asking you, begging you, after this story ends, after you finish listening, don't think about the stairs. Don't count. Don't imagine descending. Don't dream of the depth. Think about something else, anything else. Think about the sky, about trees, about the people you love, about coffee and music and laughter and sunlight, about all the things that exist on the surface, all the things worth staying for. Because the depth might offer transcendence, it might offer understanding, it might offer a merging with ancient consciousness and vast awareness. But the surface offers something too, something precious, something rare in the universe. It offers life, human life, brief and fragile and imperfect, but ours, authentically, uniquely ours. And maybe that's worth holding on to. Maybe that's worth resisting the pull. Maybe that's worth staying in the light for. So stay here with me, on the surface, in the world, in the moment. Don't go down, don't count, don't touch the depth. Stay here, stay human, stay alive. Please. The sound of breathing continues for 10 more seconds. Deep, slow, rhythmic, like something vast, exhaling, like the depth itself, breathing through the speakers, through the walls, through the air around you. And then silence, complete silence. And in that silence, just for a moment, you might wonder, am I still on the surface? Or have I already started to descend? Have I been counting this whole time without realizing it? Is this level 1? Or level 100? Or level 1000? How deep have I gone just by listening? And most importantly, can I still come back up? The answer to that question you'll have to discover for yourself. But I'll give you one final piece of advice, one last warning that might save you from becoming another victim of the midnight staircase. If you start counting, stop. If you start descending in your dreams, wake yourself up. If you feel the pull toward basements, toward stairwells, toward the spaces below, resist it with everything you have. Because every step down is a step away from your humanity. Every level descended is a level of consciousness lost to the depth. And if you go too far, if you reach the place where Elena Vasquez stood at level 37, you will face a choice. Merge or return. Become the depth or fight your way back to the surface. Most people who reach that point don't choose to return. The depth is too vast, too ancient, too seductive. The promise of transcendence, of becoming part of something infinite and eternal, is too compelling. But if you do choose to return, if you find the strength to climb back up, level by level, step by step, counting backward toward the surface, you'll discover what Elena Vasquez discovered. You'll never be the same. Part of you will always be down there. Part of you will always be counting. Part of you will always be aware of the vast consciousness waiting beneath. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering, did I make the right choice? Should I have stayed in the depth? Should I have merged? Should I have let go of my humanity and become something more? Or did I make the right choice by returning, by staying human, by resisting the pull? You'll never know for certain. You'll live with doubt, with the constant awareness of what lies beneath, with the nightly dreams of descent, with the numbers echoing in your head, with the pull that never quite goes away. But you'll be alive. You'll be conscious. You'll be yourself, or at least whatever version of yourself survives the journey down and back up again. Is that enough? Is staying human worth the price of knowing what you've given up? I can't answer that for you. Only you can decide whether the surface is worth staying for. Whether human consciousness, limited and mortal as it is, has value compared to the vast eternal awareness of the depth. All I can do is tell you the stories, document the phenomena, warn you about what's waiting if you choose to descend. The rest is up to you, your choice, your consciousness, your journey. Just remember, once you start counting, it's very hard to stop. Once you start descending, coming back up requires more strength than most people possess. And once you touch the depth, even briefly, even in dreams, you're never truly free of it again. So make your choice carefully. Think deeply about whether you want to know what's down there. Because some knowledge can't be unlearned. Some experiences can't be forgotten. Some descents can't be undone. And the midnight staircase never stops calling, never stops pulling, never stops inviting you to take just one more step down, just one more level, just a little bit deeper, to see what's waiting, to understand what lies beneath, to touch the depth, to count a little higher, to merge a little more. It's calling right now. Can you hear it? In the silence between my words, in the space between your thoughts, in the darkness behind your closed eyes. The stairs are there, waiting, always descending, always pulling you down into the ancient consciousness that exists beneath the surface of everything. But you don't have to answer. You don't have to descend. You can stay here, in the light, on the surface, in the human world. You can choose life, choose consciousness, choose yourself, choose to remain what you are rather than becoming what the depth wants you to be. The choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be, until the moment when it's not, until the moment when the boundary dissolves completely and the choice is taken away. When surface and depth merge and there's no distinction anymore, no decision to make, no resistance possible, just the endless descent, the eternal count, the merge. But that moment hasn't come yet. You still have time. You still have choice. You still have the power to stay on the surface, to refuse the call, to resist the pull, to remain human, to stay alive, to stay yourself. So stay, please, for your sake and for the sake of everyone who cares about you, for the sake of maintaining the boundary a little longer, for the sake of keeping human consciousness separate from the depth consciousness just a little while longer, for the sake of preserving the surface world in all its imperfect beauty. Stay here with me. Don't go down. Don't count. Don't merge. Stay human. Stay alive. Stay on the surface. Stay in the light. Stay in the world. Stay in yourself. Stay present. Stay aware. Stay here. Stay safe. Stay awake. Stay conscious. Stay human. Stay human. Stay. Please. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.